The entire market is being turned upside down. Europe's biggest economy, Germany, has made a shocking decision. Chancellor Olaf Scholz has called the new U.S. tariffs fundamentally wrong. Germany, the largest economy in Europe, has frozen the certification of U.S.-made electric vehicles. This decision is based on a new law requiring EV manufacturers to strictly adhere to data and emission standards. Companies like Tesla, Ford, and GM have been directly affected, and this is just the beginning. But it doesn't stop there. France has unleashed a carbon tax bomb, hitting hard at America's heavy-duty vehicles. From now on, American SUVs and trucks will face higher taxes based on their weight and fuel consumption. Denmark also jumped on the bandwagon, ending EV subsidies for US-made electric vehicles, stripping Tesla and Ford of their competitive edge in the European market. These three major EU countries have taken action, plunging the US auto industry into chaos. These moves are clearly not a coincidence. They are putting tremendous pressure on American automakers, and just imagine how this is going to impact your pocket. Immediately after Germany froze the certification of U.S. electric vehicles, a massive wave hit Wall Street. Tesla's stock plummeted by 11%, Ford dropped 9%, and GM saw a 7% decline. It wasn't just the giants, smaller electric vehicle companies couldn't hold up either, leading to the collapse of the entire industry. This has wiped out over $100 billion from the U.S. auto market in a very short time. Investors have realized that the foundations of U.S. automakers don't align with the strict standards set by Europe. This is a shock not only financially but also a huge shift in the global strategy of the U.S. auto industry. These companies now face a big question. Can they adapt quickly enough to survive this battle? Tesla, with plans worth $31.4 billion in Europe, is now facing a huge shock. The Gigafactory Berlin and other Tesla projects in the EU have been frozen immediately. Funding and investments from banks and EU governments have also been suspended. The cause is believed to be violations of data sovereignty and recycling fraud. With no other options left, Tesla has no choice but to abandon Europe and shift its focus to Southeast Asia, specifically targeting India, Vietnam, and Thailand. It doesn't stop there. Over 12,000 US-made electric vehicles have been seized or delayed at EU ports. The reason? These vehicles failed to comply with the new data and emissions laws required by European countries. Images of the cars being seized and surrounded by customs officials have spread rapidly across global media. This isn't just the action of one country, it's a clear message to US automakers. No lobbying efforts can override public trust. European countries are ready to take strong action to protect the environment and consumer rights while US companies are being held accountable. Over 200,000 workers in the US auto industry have lost their jobs in just 3 weeks, and this number is still climbing. The factories, once hubs of thousands of job opportunities, are now being forced to close or cut production due to the collapse of export contracts. The auto supply chain, already struggling in recent times, has now been hit with another shockwave, causing numerous suppliers and satellite companies to scale back or shut down completely. These workers, who have dedicated their lives to this industry, now face not only the loss of income but also an uncertain future. Families in car manufacturing regions no longer have access to good job options. While U.S. companies watch as Europe moves forward with its own path, the U.S. economy is now paying the price for the mistakes in trade policies, and the cost is an immeasurable loss of jobs and livelihoods for millions of Americans. 2,000 jobs gone. $50 billion redirected. Ford didn't step back, Ford stepped away. No warning, no apology, no negotiation. Just one move, abandoning American soil. And now, one question remains. Is this betrayal or the only path to survive? When Ford walked away from the land that built it for over a century, Michigan stood as the heart of American industry. Ford, the lifeline of Wayne, was once the pride of American labor. Then came the announcement, production of the Focus, the C-Max, and most EV lines moving overseas. No more factories. No more assembly lines. No more promises to stay. Why? Because Ford can no longer afford the storm created by tariffs. Steel, more expensive. Aluminum, more expensive. Lithium, up over 300% between 2020 and 2024. 80% of the world's lithium is refined in China. America imposed tariffs. Ford paid the price. Building EVs in the US now costs 25% more than doing it abroad. Ford was cornered. We're not competing with a company, we're competing with a system. Tesla isn't just a car company. Tesla is a system, an empire that mines lithium, builds batteries, manufactures vehicles, and trains self-driving AI all in-house. No dealerships. No bureaucratic bottlenecks. While Ford still wrestles with unions and legacy systems, Tesla delivers directly to your door. One Ford executive put it bluntly, "We're not competing with a carmaker anymore, we're going up against an entirely different production civilization." So Ford struck back. Enter Project T3, a complete reinvention. $50 billion in investment. Partnership with BMW for solid-state batteries. Robots performing 90% of assembly work. EVs that run 1 million miles and charge in minutes. No more showrooms, just click and drive. Ford isn't building cars anymore, they're building the future. Ford was called a traitor, but they didn't blink. Hours after the announcement, political chaos erupted. Trump predictably fired back. They turned their backs on the very workers who built them. Punishment was proposed. Tariffs, blacklists, federal contract cancellations. And Ford didn't flinch. Didn't dodge. Didn't explain. Only one sentence from CEO Jim Farley. "Do you want to lose 2,000 jobs now or 20,000 5 years from now?" Harsh? Yes. But it's reality. Ford didn't run, they chose to survive. They sacrificed a symbol to save the structure. And ironically, what looks like betrayal today may be the most pragmatic act of patriotism we've seen. Adapt or disappear. Ford has made its choice. Ford knows the truth. No business can conquer the future by clinging to the past. Governments can delay, but markets don't wait. Hesitate, and you're done. While Trump rants, Ford is rewriting the entire game. No more wrench turners. No more legacy factories. No more dependency on political mood swings. They're building plants where robots outnumber humans. They're hiring software engineers over assembly workers. They're selling cars like Amazon delivers packages. If they succeed, Ford becomes the blueprint for America's post-oil industrial rebirth. If they fail, it'll be a warning shot for every giant asleep in the old economy. Don't blink, because Ford might be the first, but they won't be the last. This is a struggle for survival for manufacturers in the U.S., as protective policies seem no longer strong enough to keep them standing firm against the rapidly changing technology and global market. Ford is standing at a major crossroads: adapt to technology or stick with the old model. And if they get it right, can the U.S. automotive industry survive and thrive in the world of electric vehicles? The old flames between the U.S. and Canada have reached the point of insufficient credit. Instead of flowers, Ottawa is now sending retaliatory tariffs along with a supply chain overhaul that doesn't include Washington. According to reports from Stellantis, the company has temporarily laid off nearly 900 workers across 5 plants in the U.S., including sites in Michigan and Indiana, following new 25% import tariffs introduced by the U.S. government in April 2025. In parallel, Stellantis announced it would pause production at its Windsor assembly plant in Ontario, Canada, for 2 weeks and extend the shutdown of its Toluca plant in Mexico through the end of April. The root cause: a sweeping 25% tariff on imported vehicles and components affecting partners like Canada and Mexico. According to S&P Global Mobility, a vehicle with a base price of $25,000 could see production costs rise by $6,250 under the new tariffs. This is threatening the fragmented manufacturing model that has defined the North American auto sector for decades, where a vehicle may cross the US-Canada border 6 to 7 times before final assembly. Now, each crossing brings a new tax bill, adding significant pressure on production costs just as global competition accelerates. A report from Anderson Economic Group warns that the 25% import tariff could raise vehicle prices in the U.S. by $5,000 to $15,000 depending on each model's reliance on foreign-made parts. Fully imported EVs or those heavily reliant on parts from Canada, Mexico, or Asia will face the sharpest price hikes. According to BANS, Tesla still relies on about 25% of its components from Mexico and another 10% from non-US partners. Ford, too, is significantly tied to Canadian and Mexican supply lines. Cost modeling shows production expenses could rise by $4,000 to $6,000 per vehicle, translating to a 9% to 15% price increase for end consumers. Example: the Tesla Model Y long-range AWD is now priced around $51,000, up from $47,990 just months earlier. The Ford Mustang Mach-E standard trim now lists between $45,000 and $47,000, about $2,000 to $3,500 higher than in 2024. As prices soar, many middle-income buyers, the main targets for EV transition programs, are putting off purchases while government incentives struggle to close the gap. According to Reuters Automotive, many North American EV makers are now re-evaluating their investment strategies, with delays, redirection of capital, and risk-avoidant planning on the rise. Ford Motor Company has delayed the launch of its new three-row electric SUV in Canada and its next-generation electric pickup in Tennessee, citing weakening global demand. Rivian Automotive Inc. has also put on hold a multi-billion-dollar factory project in Georgia as part of a broader effort to reduce costs while preparing to launch a more affordable EV line. Meanwhile, China's BYD has aggressively expanded in Europe, launching its premium Denza brand directly challenging legacy giants like BMW and Mercedes. Canada is actively seeking new strategic partners in clean energy and electric mobility. A preliminary agreement with the European Union on clean battery standards and rules of origin, ongoing EV cooperation talks with Australia and South Korea, and expanded trade deals with France, Germany, and Mexico as part of an extended CPTPP framework. These moves signal that Canada isn't cutting ties entirely with the US, but it is reducing dependency, especially given Washington's increasingly unpredictable trade policies. The OECD projects that if these tariffs persist through late 2025, the average production cost of an EV in North America could increase by 8% to 12%, largely due to higher costs of imported parts and compliance complexity. An estimated 185 economies are now feeling the indirect effects of escalating trade frictions between major global blocs, leading to a re-evaluation of investment flows and sourcing networks. Yet despite the short-term disruptions, many analysts argue this could be a chance for North America to strengthen local production and diversify sourcing. Building long-term supply chain resilience is becoming more crucial by the day. Can you ever imagine that Canada, the land of maple syrup and polite apologies, would actually say nope to the US when it comes to oil exports? It sounds like something out of a Hollywood blockbuster, not real life. But this could totally happen. First, here's a tough pill to swallow. Kind of like raw Alberta beef. 60% of the oil the US imports comes from Canada. To be exact, that's 4 million barrels a day. It's like the US is blood-sucking, oops, we mean oil-sipping, from Canada every morning like it's a cup of coffee. So why Canada? Because the kind of oil they produce is heavy, like a Trump speech, and it just so happens to be a perfect match for the refineries along the US Gulf Coast. But here's the twist. Canada is getting tired of playing the quiet, loyal lover. They're now eyeing Europe with a look that says, oh hello, EU, you look like you need some oil. Through potentially deboning pipelines and accelerating LNG development in a couple of areas, always keeping in mind that Europe emphasizes energy security and climate crisis concerns, Canada is rethinking its game plan. Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, is front and center in this oil-fueled showdown, and she's not beating around the bush. If the US plays hard, Alberta will start pumping oil to Europe instead. Let's see how long the US lasts without Canadian oil. It smells like a political telenovela right now. Alberta alone sends 700,000 barrels a day down to the Gulf Coast. It's basically pouring Red Bull straight into the US refining system. But if that flow gets cut, game over. Texas might have to chug energy drinks from Venezuela, and let's be real. Everyone knows fake stuff hits different, and not in a good way. The US loves to say, we're energy independent. We're fine, but just like that ex who keeps checking their old Flames story every day, the US still secretly needs Canada's oil. If Canada pulls back, gas prices in New England could jump like housing prices in San Francisco. We're talking 20 to 40 cents more per gallon. And don't forget electricity. Canada is also a giant charging station for the US, sending over 11,000 gigawatt hours of power every year. Could the US replace that? Sure. By waiting for shipments from Venezuela, the Middle East, or by hoping Elon Musk figures out how to make electricity from the human brain. This isn't just about oil, it's a full-blown tit-for-tat between Trump and the Canadian government. Trump brought back tariffs on steel, dairy, and cars. Canada hit back with a classic, okay, just wait, we'll target your ethanol now. Ethanol, produced in the US as much as memes about Trump, is a lifeline for American farmers. Canada has been buying it up like crazy to fuel its clean energy programs. But if Canada pulls the plug, farmers in Iowa might actually lose it. Meanwhile, Europe, freshly dumped by Russia, is desperately looking for a new energy partner. Canada shows up like a gentleman bringing cedar and a few million barrels of oil. In March 2025 alone, Canada exported 8 million barrels to the EU, double the previous quarter. The EU might be the new lover, but is this true love or just a rebound after breaking up with Putin? Canada is making a serious glow-up, from the sweet girl next door to a major player in the global energy game. And it's not just about oil anymore. We're talking about uranium for clean nuclear reactors, rare minerals for electric vehicles, and clean electricity to charge the entire US grid. With this kind of energy combo, Canada isn't just selling fuel, it's selling influence. In a post-fossil fuel world, Canada could be the Switzerland of energy, neutral but absolutely essential. So what do you think? If Canada really shifts its strategy, will the US come crawling back, or will it go looking for a third party like Venezuela? Better hold on to that gas pump because this energy storm is just getting started. Right now, 20,000 protesters are rallying in Salt Lake City, 36,000 in Los Angeles, and 150,000 at Coachella. Meanwhile, bond yields are skyrocketing and the dollar is standing on the edge of a cliff, about to fall. So what's Trump doing? Don't worry, he's saving the economy with his chaotic Twitter posts. Trump may think he's the king of the Twitter kingdom, but in reality, he's just fueling the fire of dissatisfaction burning everywhere. While he's blasting meaningless messages on social media, 20,000 people in Salt Lake City aren't just protesting, they're singing about a world without Trump. Bernie Sanders, meanwhile, looks like a rock and roll star, drawing massive crowds. 36,000 in Los Angeles, 125,000 to 150,000 at Coachella. Thank you, Utah. Bernie beams, while Trump sits in an air-conditioned room shouting on social media like a 12-year-old left out at a party. The real question is, does Trump even know what's happening? Or is he just continuing to live in his own virtual world? Let's talk about economic disaster. Bond yields, think of them like the countdown clock of a time bomb, are soaring as if trying to escape the desperation of the US economy. The dollar, once the king of currencies, is losing trust faster than a broken car trying to climb a hill but getting stuck halfway. What are other countries doing? They're refusing to sit on this Titanic and are finding ways to escape the sinking ship. The financial markets today are like a giant bear wagging its tail, and anyone who doesn't run fast enough is surely going to get crushed. On top of that, we're seeing authoritarian behavior and propaganda at an alarming rate. Trump, the man the whole world is watching, has taken a new step, posting videos praising his immigration policies and promoting dictators like Nayib Bukele from El Salvador. Bukele's appearances in those videos feel like watching a kid who has money to buy a car but drives it like a reckless street racer with no idea where he's going. What does this mean for us? Maybe Trump is trying to assert, I'm not your president, I'm the king of dictators. But the problem is, does he realize he's clinging to paths that lead straight into darkness? Maybe he doesn't see the issue, or maybe he just gets even more fired up to post more videos. With each one, he digs himself deeper into the mud of wrong decisions. And maybe he forgets that these paths don't just lead to personal failure, they drag the nation he once claimed was the greatest into disastrous consequences. And let's not forget the contradiction in Trump's tariff policies. They're like a troublesome kid in class who changes their mind every single day. One day it's high tariffs, and the next day it's low tariffs. You could say he's experimenting with a new strategy called tariffs based on mood. When businesses look at this mess, they feel like they're walking through a maze with no way out. Not to mention, constantly shifting tariff policies are making America's trade partners scratch their heads and wonder whether they can still trust the US. One day Trump says, "Let's work together." The next day, it's, "No one is exempt." Because of this chaos, the global economy is suffering, and no one knows where the end point is. So will we continue to follow the unstable path of Trump's decisions, or is there still a glimmer of hope to salvage the US economy and its international reputation? Don't take your eyes off the story, because there's much more drama, fallout, and hard choices to come.